Hello and welcome to .hack Hidden Stories. This is an old fan fiction that I wrote about 5 or 6 years ago, and I have lost track of where this fan fiction was heading. And I wanted to practice my podcasting skills from recording to editing. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. .hack Hidden Stories, Chapter 1. We sat upon the cliffs of Dunlorieg. I took a deep breath, watching the clouds below us. It was peaceful to be back in the world again. I looked at Tsukasa beside me, and the memories rushed back to what he had told me. I sympathized for him, not being able to log out and all. I often wondered if it was all possible, and if he was telling me the truth, but something in his eyes told me he was serious. He sat in a sleep-like gaze, staring out into space as if I wasn't even there. He didn't seem to like to talk much, but suddenly he looked more alert as his eyes glided back and forth. A sigh escaped. "What is it?" I asked, leaning over. Tsukasa always seemed to talk in a mumble, as I found it easier to come closer when he spoke. Me being hard of hearing in the first place. "I don't want to meet Mimiru again. She kind of gets on my nerves, you know?" He glanced down unsurely once more. I put my arm around his shoulders. "I think you should meet up with her. She only wants to help, you know? But she doesn't know how to leave me alone," he said. We sat there for a while, not saying a word. He then picked up his staff and maneuvered himself up. "She's probably going to bring him along." "Who? Bear?" He nodded, kicking a stone off the cliff. "But he wants to help you too, don't you see?" He was quiet a while before he replied. "But they're both so selfish. They just keep digging at me for information they really don't need to know." Tsukasa looked at me, as if I had all the answers. I let out a sigh and put my hand on his shoulder. "You should really go." "But Silverwater—" I put my finger to his lips. "No buts. Go on." I pointed away. "Mimiru is waiting. I want you to at least give her a chance and listen to what she has to say." I backed up and looked up at him a moment. He seemed to think about it. After a few moments of silence, he finally warped away. Grinning, I walked over to the nearby shop to buy myself some healing items. He better have went, or I'll have that boy's head. I walked away from the shop, my inventory full of healing items, when I heard a voice from behind me. "How did he do that?" I turned around to see a green-haired guy running around the spot Tsukasa warped from. But he didn't even use the Chaos Gate. I walked up behind him, watching. It didn't take long until he noticed me. "Can I help you?" I asked, feeling slightly uncomfortable as he stared. Felt even more uncomfortable when he flashed a creepy grin. "Your member address, please?" "My what?" I almost forgot I was in the game. My gut told me this was a bad idea, a random guy asking me for my member address. I began to walk away. "I don't even know you." "The name's Sora." I stopped in my tracks and turned my head with an annoyed look on my face. "You know me now?" He grinned. "Well, I'm not interested, so go away, Greenie." .hack Hidden Stories, Chapter 2. I then heard metal glide against metal, and the sound of footsteps approaching me. Before I could turn around, the guy named Sora grabbed me from behind. Two blades flashed in front of my face. I stood, slightly fearful, I'll admit. Then I realized it had been a while since I had last saved. I had been sitting on the ledge with Tsukasa for who knows how long. Great. The advantage was his. "Your member address, please. Last chance," he said in a sickly sweet voice. I held stiff. I thought about how much I had done. And if I died, would it all matter? Well, I did buy a lot of healing items, and my gold is low. I guess that would be a factor, since I can't get my money back, and I might drop a few items. I wasn't certain. Sora laughed strangely and began again. "You're such a fool. You didn't save in a while, huh?" I let out a frustrated grunt. How much of my progress was leveling up or experience gain? I didn't remember. That's a shame. I'm gonna have to kill you now. He chuckled and moved the blades close to me. "Goodbye. Mr. Sora?" A soft voice came from a few yards away. Sora loosened his grip and I slid away as fast as I could. I hid behind a wall of a shop and peered out to look at them. A slender girl dressed in blue with blue hair approached him. I knew who she was. Who in the world didn't? She was Lady Subaru of the Crimson Knights. I just observed as they talked. I could hardly hear her voice so soft and light. I heard Sora, though. He has a pretty loud mouth on him. They said something about meeting in Makanu, and Sora said something about Tsukasa. My heart sank. I was fearful for my friend. If Sora and Subaru were talking about him, this may not be a good sign. I mean, Sora almost killed me. I spied on them until they reached the Chaos Gate and vanished between the gold ring warp graphics. It only seemed like a few short minutes, but it was actually about an hour since Tsukasa went to go see Mimiru and Bear. I guess time flies when you play a game. Or it could have been the fear and adrenaline that made it felt so short. I went towards the gate. I could meet him if he didn't already leave. I began to punch in the words, "Hidden Forbidden Holy Ground," since that's where they like to meet. Before I accepted the word combination, I received a message from him. "Come." The message was short, with little meaning, but he also attached a word combination. I followed it, assuming he'll be there. Theta server. He must have known I was still in Dunlorieg. I arrived in a field location with an abundance of giant mushrooms on its landscape, but as well as the annoying babbling of mushroom. I took out a fairy's orb and watched my map, dodging the monsters as I wandered. It was a level 15 field, but I didn't feel like getting beat up a little today, even if my level was 17. Tsukasa's level isn't all that high, but with his strange warping ability, I guess he found a secure area to meet me in, away from the Scarlet Kings and Snappy Grasses. I finally found him sitting by Grandpa's spring. He notices me, but gives no gestures. I could expect that from Tsukasa, but at least I know he sees me. The Hexon Hidden Stories, Chapter 3. I approached Tsukasa, his face emotionless as he stared into the spring, letting little wisps of moisture and magic caress his face. I find a stone next to him and sit. I watch his expression slip into a slight sad curve of his eyebrows. I lean in close. If he needed to say something, I didn't want to miss it. So, what did Mimiru want? His eyes narrowed slowly as he concentrated on the water below. They asked if I was a girl in the real world. I tilted my head slightly in confusion. Why would they need to know that? What made them think that? It's none of their business. He hugged his knees and buried his head. I began to think as well. Why did they need to know that? As far as I knew, Tsukasa is a boy. I wanted to ask myself, but he might shrink away from me again if I asked. So I kept my mouth shut. I'm sure Mimiru had her reasons to ask him, but it's hard to tell what. I shifted myself closer to him. I just wish they would leave me alone, he said quietly, slightly muffled by the bottom half of his Wave Master's robe. He picked up his head for the moment and eyed me. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged. So what are you gonna do now? I asked, a bit concerned. He did not look well. His eyes looked dull and shineless. In his trance-like gaze, his eyes shifted to look at the small body of water. His shoulders rose and fell in a shrug, tightening his grip on his knees. Are you going to disappear to that place you told me about? This brought a slight smile to his face, but it slipped away, and he returned to his usual self. Most likely, he mumbled, seeming to daydream about it. He described it to me briefly once, but I've never seen it with my own eyes. He told me she might not like it, whatever that means. He told me of a girl who sleeps perpetually, floating above a white bed. Could this be the she he was referring to? Somehow I doubt it. He also told me how the scenery changes an awful lot. Not even he knows why, I guess. His eyes closed and he drew in a breath. Silverwater. Is it alright for you to be up past this hour? He asked. Even I realized night was coming on fast. I stood, about to go back to the root town to save my progress, which I should have done after my encounter with Sora. I turned to Tsukasa, who remained motionless and emotionless. Do you ever sleep? I asked. Honestly, I didn't know if he did. With a slight shrug of the shoulder, he simply replied, Somewhat. I think I go into a sleep-like state, but it's different in a way. Like blacking out, I guess. I nodded in affirmation before I went on my way. See you tomorrow, alright? Sure. And he vanished. I turned to look over my shoulder. I stopped to think about the place he goes off to. In a way, it sounds wonderful. At least he has a place to stay while he's remained trapped here. I was ready to leave the field, but before I could bring up the game menu, Battle Mode On flashed through my screen. I turned to the monster to see 1,000 trees shifting its way towards me. Why not? I guess I could pick up a few experience points while I'm here. I took my sword out of its sheath on my back and lunged forward. I hacked at the creature's trunk and sliced at its branches as it crashed after me. Its large wooden eyes would never look away. I felt on top of the world chopping away at the lower level monster. It let out a roar when I finally defeated it. It crumbled into a black and white mass upon the ground. As I waited for the experience points to come, for battle mode off to flash across the screen, nothing happened. What was going on? I turned around in all directions to make sure no other monsters were around. Nothing. Hesitating slightly, I approached the grayscale mass, looking over it, wondering why it didn't vanish yet. Dahakusan Hidden Stories, Chapter 4. The next thing I knew, there was a loud echoed ringing in my ear. My eyes opened instantly. Where was I? What happened to the scenery? What happened to my kill? A chill ran up my spine as I could only see darkness. A large white spot of light appeared on the ground beneath my feet. I turned my head to the left and then to the right, hoping to get a glimpse of something, anything. The ringing returned. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. Wait, I could feel it? I put my hand to my chest. I could feel it with my fingertips, the rapid beating of my heart. To make sure I knew what I was feeling, I made my character drop to the ground. The drop was real, all right. The pain shot up through my rear on impact. I touched my character's face to realize I was touching my own face. The virtual reality gear, the controller, gone. Have I become like Tsukasa? No, I couldn't have. Could I? Surely he sees the world, and not this black empty space with a light on the floor. And if he did, how could he see me, or know where he was? Hello? I shouted. Hello? I called again. No answer. I picked myself up off the ground and gave yet another look around. I took my first step forward. The moment my foot made contact with the ground, the ringing returned. I stepped forward again, and the ringing reoccurred. Before taking another step, the ground opened up from under me, and I began to fall into a dark pit where the light did not follow. The ringing sounded again before I hit the ground. I cranked my neck around to find that I was back on the field. What happened? Was that all a glitch? Then I remembered that this was my being, no longer a character on my computer screen. I touched my new arm, strange, unlike my own. I saw another player out of the corner of my eye. Another Blade Master, just like myself. His image seemed more realistic with my new eyes. He kept going, headed off to the dungeon most likely. Hey! He turned his head. How do you return without the main screen? I asked. The Blade Master looked at me as if I were crazy. Are you new to this? I shook my head. No, but you see, I can't bring it up. I'm sorry, I can't help you. And he resumed walking. I watched him go, feeling helpless. If Tsukasa is able to navigate without the menu screen, why can't I? Not to mention checking and sending messages. So how could he possibly help me if I cannot contact him? I sat upon the ground feeling frustrated and tired. I don't know what time it is anymore. I don't know how long I've been blacked out. I picked myself back up and headed over to Grandpa's spring. Maybe if I wait long enough, he'll return. It was a long shot, but I have to try. I sat upon the same rock Tsukasa was sitting on. The stone was cold. I'm guessing it has been some time since I've blacked out, since logic tells me I should be somewhat warm if it had only been mere minutes. That was my figuring anyway. The world's physics could be different than the real world's. Dot Hack Sign Hidden Stories, Chapter 5. I waited for minutes, for hours, for days, but he never came back. I watched endless parties walk toward the field dungeon and back. Some made the comment, "Wasn't she there when we walked in?" Some only gave confused stares. What if I die in here? Will I die in the real world or regenerate? As tempting as it was to try, the fear of real death kept me from doing anything reckless. The air was humid and heavy in this field. The magical mist of the spring that made wisps up to my face were my only solace. No matter how much I wanted the rain to come, it was just not in the field's code to rain here. Just my luck, I guess. I got up and moved every so often, letting the stone bench I was sitting on cool down before sprawling back down on it. Even though it didn't do much, I still tried. It was odd, really. All this time I spent in the world, I haven't gotten hungry or anything. That thought alone made me worry about my physical body on the outside. I was losing hope with each passing day. Players on the field leave me alone. Not even one of them have attempted to use the spring and a chance to improve their weapons, but seem to decidedly leave me be. The traffic on this field seemed to increase as well, even though no player stopped. That fact alone was odd, but I didn't waste any energy trying to figure them out. The slowest time seemed to be in the wee hours of the morning, and only then did I ever really get a moment's peace without someone in the general area. It had to be about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, the usual slow period of any day, when I saw an unfamiliar sight amongst the haze. I sat up a bit and rubbed my eyes to make sure I wasn't seeing things. There stood an unusual character model, one like I've never seen before. The character model was short, but unlike a child, with overall cat-like appearance. I stared in disbelief a moment or two. Cat character models weren't available in the character creation menu, I thought to myself. So, for a cat player character to be in this field, must be the work of a hacker. Inner joy welled up inside me. There was new hope yet. Hackers know how to illegally manipulate the game to their own pleasure. To get the help of a hacker would be a godsend. I stand on the stone bench and cup my hands over my mouth. "Hey!" I shout. "Hey, you! Over there!" The cat froze. Its fur realistically prickled up, from its head to its tail. It turned to me with wide, red gemstone eyes. "Hey, please, over here!" As I call out, a hazy aura engulfs the cat, causing the image to shimmer and begin to fade. I rush forward in a state of panic, waving my arms wildly as I try to stop my last hope of escaping from disappearing. "No, wait! I need help! Don't go!" The aura fades away from the cat as it looks back at me with a look of stunned confusion. I reach them, out of breath. The cat waits patiently and curiously as I huff and puff. I straighten up, get a good look at the strange new player character. The cat was lavender purple on the right side of their body and white on the left. There was a lavender-colored star over its eye on the white half of its face. Wearing what looks like a grayish-brown muslin clothing, topped with a stiff burlap hat that goes up to a point to the tip, much like a witch's hat. "You're a hacker, right? Maybe you can help me. You see, I have a rather peculiar problem." I gestured to myself. "You see, I can't open up my menu or my messenger. I can feel everything. I'm literally trapped in here." The cat looks me over and moves its mouth as if it were speaking. I lean in close, trying to catch the mumbling, but you hear nothing. "I'm sorry, can you speak up? I can't hear you." The cat stares at me in confusion, as if it had just repeated itself. Again. I hear nothing. "Are you typing in the chat? I can't see the chat window. Is there something wrong with your microphone? Is it not plugged in?" The cat looks frustrated as I speak. Its ears flatten. I take a breath and recompose myself. "I'm sorry. How about this? Can you relay a message for me?" The cat leans in, its ears pricking up again. It tilts its head curiously as I gather my thoughts. "I need a message relayed to a friend of mine, a wave master by the name of Tsukasa. Have you heard of him?" At that very moment, the cat's eyes widen and its fur bristles. Before I could word my message for Tsukasa, the hazy aura from before engulfs the cat and makes the cat disappear. I stare in awe at the space where the cat used to occupy. I knew Sakasa was a hot topic on the message boards as of late, but I didn't think he'd strike fear into hackers. I let out a shriek as I fall to my knees. My last hope of getting off this field vanished right before my eyes.